Hi, welcome to the Jurassic Park 3 Minute. We'll be discussing the second Jurassic Park sequel 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're back to finish out the week with minute 35 of Jurassic Park 3. Dave, ready to get into it?
Sure.
Alright. As we enter minute 34 of Jurassic Park 3, Amanda had run off into the jungle screaming after being entangled in the dead corpse of her ex-boyfriend, and Paul had gone running after her, trying to bring her back. As we start on minute 35, Paul catches up to her and embraces her, even though in the background we can see this isn't the best location to be in. At the 15-second mark, after Paul says, "I'm sorry about Ben," Amanda breaks down and says, "It's not Ben, Paul, it's Eric. He's out there, all by himself." The two pull each other closer together, and Paul assures her that don't worry, we'll find him. At the 35-second mark, Amanda realises that there's something else in the clearing with them, and she can see it behind Paul. At the 43-second mark, we cut back to the clearing, where Billy and Udesky are rolling up the parachute, and from a distance we hear Paul call out to Grant, "Dr. Grant, you should come and look at this." With that, Grant walks off screen. Udesky looks at Billy and gestures, "I'm going with Grant," and leaves Billy to pack up the parachute. And as the minute ends, Grant arrives where Paul and Amanda are standing. Paul gestures off to something on the ground, and Grant starts to crouch down, looking at something that hasn't been revealed to us yet. As we continue into 35, we got Paul running to catch up to Amanda. And again, we've sort of got this nice, lush, almost nublar foliage here. Yes, it's not really sunny, it seems to be overcast, but it's still sort of green, lush and vibrant here.
Yeah, it is. It's like almost like an idyllic green. It's beautiful. And as you see Paul running after Amanda, you can kind of spot through the trees, and it is overcast, and it's almost like a stormy overcast, and kind of makes me wish that we got to see that more.
Well, we get a little bit more of that here, because at the 4-second mark we cut to almost darkness, as it looks like a moonlight coming through the foliage as Paul does catch up to her. And you can see
that part is funny because, it clearly switches from, it clearly switches between on location on a set. You can tell just by the lighting that they're doing.
Do you reckon this, when he finally catches up to it, it's on a set?
It is on a set because it's that same little stream that they got running through every single one of the sets behind the nest.
Oh, okay, I was going to ask, yeah, because as he does catch up to her and they embrace, you can see sort of that fuzzy blur of the stream. Mm-hmm. It looks like a lot larger stream than what we see when Grant gets over there, but even when when Paul catches up to it, it looks like they're clearly going up a small hill from where that stream was.
Yeah, the trees behind them are made to kind of look like banyan grove trees, but it's very clearly supposed to be a set. You can not really tell, but you can tell,
Oh, I was going to say, this is where we go from Nublar back to Sauna and just that real dark, deep dark, can't see much beyond the trees where, of course, because it's a set. Because we do get that sort of pan as he catches up and we get to see this clearing here in the darkened forest. And as you said, those sort of big banyan trees type stumps here and some sun sort of shining, or lighting shining on some of it further along. And it might be a sign of... I wonder if the two scenes were filmed differently, because we were going to get to the lab in 2 minutes' time, and it was going to be where they stayed overnight. So maybe they're sort of trying to show here where this scene, Paul and Amanda, it's more of a approaching night where the sun's getting lower, the light's getting more of that goldy colour and not so much a clear.
It could be, because remember I mentioned last week how the lighting over the tree, you could see the kind of orangish glow coming up from behind the fog that was around the tree. Yeah. But it's funny because outside this little alcove here that the Raptor Nest is in, you see like a huge variety of foliage. You got, just looking at it, you got young little saplings, you got the undergrowth that's lying all over the place. You got elephant grass, these little weeds, things. You even have like stalks of bamboo shooting up around. I mean, you can see bamboo. But then you get into here, and it's a rock, a nest, and these fake trees.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you can, as they walk into the clearing, you can see sort of the whiteness behind us, some ferns of an cluster of eggs there, but it's more so when we get them two embracing and you can see the eggs behind them, and that big black round rock in the middle of the clearing. I wonder if that's sort of it might be thinking too much to think it's a bit of a callback to the novel where they were in the creek bed with all the big black boulders.
Could have been. I mean, I won't deny
it.
I've always wanted to see that. I mean, we kind of get it a little bit in the Lost World with those carcasses all over the raptor area. But I really, really would like to see that whole set piece in a Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah, agree.
With the boulders and the rocks and the trees kind of sprouting up between those. And then you get to the end and there's this little alcove kind of surrounded with various deep moments or various animals of decay. I thought that was a great part from the novel, and it was always disappointing me that we never got to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll definitely be bringing up a little bit more about that scene and that chapter in the next minute when we get to the egg clutches themselves, just what that might mean. But yeah, and this isn't really a boulder; it's more of just a black rock outcrop coming out of the ground, which is probably just styrofoam or something painted up to make it look like a rock. But yeah, the two of them hug, and Paul's saying sorry about Ben, and over his shoulder again you can see that fast-moving stream through the foliage. Which I thought maybe they'd just crossed a stream, but they don't look wet. But Amanda tries to push away from Paul, saying it's not Paul, it's not Ben Paul, it's Eric. He's alone out there by himself, and they embrace again. And Paul tells her it's okay, we'll find him. And then it's Amanda. Then you can sort of see her gaze falls on something behind them, and it almost sounds like a compy, that one of them compy chirps here. Which always confused me. Thought, oh no, the compies are there, and that's what she's looking at. But I don't think the compies would be game enough to go anywhere near the Raptor's Nest.
No, I mean they would be snacks.
Yeah, and that's. I suppose we can touch really briefly here. It's a shame that the nest site's this clean, or this like there's no carcasses, there's nothing apart from these eggs.
Well, like I said, it was something it was a set piece I always wished transferred from the novels to the film better than what we got in The Lost World. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, it's clean. I mean, I suppose you'd want your nest to be clean, but the raptors, as we originally knew them anyway, were not like that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose I'm going to keep on going. We'll save it for next minute because all we get is a lot of flashing between different egg clusters and not much apart from Grant's look of horror next minute. But yeah, there's not the chaos that the sauna raptors have in the novel.
No, they're not at all.
Yeah. But we will talk more about that next minute. We cut back to Udesky, Billy, and Grant folding up the parachute. I should have looked at a couple of YouTube videos on how you actually fold a parachute up, but I don't think you just keep on rolling it up like this. You'd think it'd have to sort of come out of the bag with the air picking up. I don't know how it would deploy if it's rolled up like this, but
I have no idea how to roll up a parachute either. So I'm just gonna say, I don't know, maybe a tray.
Yeah, well, Billy's doing it, so he'd know how to do it, but. Off from somewhere in the jungle, we can hear Paul yelling out, "Dr. Grant, you should come look at this." So he's still, even though they're in amongst the eggs, yelling out seems to be the most prudent thing to do to get Grant's attention. But Grant does get to his feet and walks off in their direction, and Udesky sort of follows. It's like he doesn't want to be left with Billy. He wants to stay off Grant at all times, so he sort of just, "Stay here, Billy, I'm going with Grant," and runs off after him.
He's like a kid who is scared out of his mind.
Yeah. But Grant arrives by the Kirby side, and you can hear that gurgling of the water now somewhere off behind him, and Paul points to something on the ground in front of them, and as the minute ends, Grant sort of moves slowly and crouches down in front of the camera, looking extremely worried. I'll say, as we get that sort of ominous score start to kick in, almost similar to the Raptors in the kitchen.
Yeah, it does. It almost also kind of reminds me a bit of the sound that we hear, that kind of the same music that they make before the T-Rex comes. That horn that we get before the T-Rex comes in the first movie, and that we hear in as the movie starts, the pounding, and then we get that. I'm not really sure what kind of instrument. I imagine it's a horn making it, though.
Yeah, as much as I listen to soundtracks, I don't. There's a lot of sounds I hear that I have no idea what's making it. Whether there might be a bit of the Foley work as well, where they're rubbing something together or something.
Could be. Yeah, that's a possibility.
But yeah, we don't get an actual up close look at the eggs here. That's all next minute.
I do kind of like how, just going backwards for a minute though, but that shot that we get of Billy wrapping up that final shot we get of Billy alone wrapping up that parachute, and we can see the rest of the clearing that they're in. And I do like how it's very reminiscent of Novel, sorta, in a way. It kind of has that, like, kind of, they must have stuffed a one of those fog machines somewhere behind one of the trees, because you can kind of see fog wafting through the crepuscular rays that are shining down onto the scene, and it looks really spooky, and I gotta like that, you know?
Yeah, well, that's during winter here. You do get that fog start to come in by late afternoon as it cools down. So again, it's looking more towards getting closer and closer to nightfall, where in the time of the film, well, we're still around lunchtime, I'd imagine here. So we're nowhere near the temperature cooling off is quick enough to create the fog. But especially when we get to the Raptor Nest in a minute too, the smoke machine's going full time there as well in the background. But also when Billy does arrive on the scene at the Raptor Nest, it's raining, so maybe that's why it cuts. Why it's sort of, as Amanda's running through the ferns and at the start of the minute, it's sort of that more of a brighter green, but the storm clouds have definitely come in.
You can see it on their clothes and in Amanda's hair. I'm not sure if it's the rain or just the humidity, but you can kind of see there's like dark spots on Paul's shirt that looked like it was being dripped on, and then you can see it in Amanda's hair, how stringy and stuck to her face it is.
Yeah, and whether they just turn the rain machine on for a minute or so just to give everything that sheen, even all the foliage around them as they're sitting there embracing, as Paul catches up, you can see that sort of the ground looks wet. It looks like it's just rain there, and especially next minute when Grant's sort of looking at the eggs all sort of look wet, the nests look wet, and when Billy Bear walks around the tree packing the last bit of the parachute into the bag, you can physically see the rain falling in big drops, sort of between the canopy of the tree, and there's mud on the ground. So it just seemed like a bit of a shift, a bit of a jump, sort of when she's running in what seems like just a bit of an overcast day to the set. But
it could be one of those days where the rain moves in and out. I mean, I've had days here where it's raining in the backyard and sunny in the front yard.
Alright, briefly going into the script and novel comparisons. While Paul and Amanda embrace, Amanda has a bit of an added line here. With Ben around, there'd be someone to keep Eric safe, and that's sort of the other reason she's upset now, realising that Ben's not around with him. So
that's actually something when I first watched the movie, I got really confused about, because we see the skeleton come down, and then Amanda runs, and Paul's calming her down, and she says, and he says he's sorry about Ben, but then I never got connected the two when she says it's not Ben, Paul, it's Eric. He's out there all alone. I thought the skeleton was Eric, and I thought the kid was Ben. To be fair, I thought and I kept wondering, why are they calling Ben Eric? To be fair, I was like 8 years old, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it might even it might be something from an earlier script, or where we had more of a backstory with Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, like we had the whole he's with Ben Hildebrand and all that when we first realised what they're actually doing on the island, and here she's saying I thought Ben would keep him safe on the island. So whether Ben was more outdoorsy than what Paul was, I'm guessing that's probably what the case was. Maybe that's why they were in Costa Rica, because Ben had been there before or something.
I'm not sure. I kind of always got the idea that Paul thought Ben was a bad influence on Eric, and that's kind of why he disapproved of him.
But Udesky sort of runs off after Paul and Amanda too, and checking on his clients. Udesky stops at the edge of the thicket, and the hairs on the back of his neck begin to rise as he sort of sees where he's standing, and that's Udesky then that calls out to Dr. Grant and not Paul. And then Billy comes over, putting the remaining section of the chute into his backpack.
The weird thing is that in the trailer shot, we actually get the on-camera shot of Paul yelling for Grant. We don't just hear him; we actually see him he cups his hands to his face and says the line.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna rewatch that in a minute. So that's something else that was filmed, and eventually must have got cut out, but they've decided to put it in the trailer.
I mean, trailers are always full of alternate and B-roll takes.